This is going to be a walkthrough video for the final exam review. And as always, you will have different numbers than I do, but following the same process that I'm using, you're going to get your answers. So with the 29 questions we have on this final exam review, we're going to start with the first one. And this has to do with a probability. So whenever you have a probability question, you have to find out what your problem is involved. Now, looking at this first problem, it involves the OR. So we're going to use the addition rule. So probability of being in the Air Force or a man. So first you need to find the probability of being in the Air Force. You need to find probability of being a man. And if there is an overlapping piece, you have to make sure to subtract. You don't want to count any outcome twice. All right, so let's find the probability of being in the Air Force. So total people in the Air Force. Total people in the Air Force, you're looking at 300 plus 70, which gives 370. That's your portion of interest. Now, we also need to find a grand total, because that is what we're going to divide the 370 by. So we have 420 plus 10 plus 320 plus 60 plus 300 plus 70 plus 170 plus 80. This gives a total of 1430. Now moving on to finding the probability of being a man, you need to find the total men. So total men. So total men, you're going to look at all the purple bars. You're going to add all the purple bars. So this is going to be 420 plus 320 plus 300 and plus 170. We end up with a total of 1,210. So you take that value and then you divide by your grand total of 1430. And now we need to subtract any outcome that was counted twice in both cases. So when we're looking at the total people in the Air Force, we counted 300. And when we're looking at the total men, 300 was also counted. So since 300 was counted twice, in both cases, we have to subtract. All right, so being in the Air Force and being a man at the same time is 300, which we need to subtract. Plus 1210 minus 300 divided by 1430. A reduced fraction or a simplified fraction. Mm-hmm. 128 over 143. That's a reduced form. All right, so moving on to the next question, which is question number 2. So question number 2, we have ratio. This is a ratio problem. So here we need to use the circle graph and a table beneath it to answer or to help us answer this question. So here the ratio of tax to total budget, where the total budget is 2,500. We've been given that. Now we need to go to the table and figure out the taxes. So the taxes is 475. Now in ratio, the quantity that comes before your two statement will always be at the top, and the quantity after the two statement will always be at the bottom. So you have 475 divided by 2,500, and leaving this as a simplified fraction. That's what the question is asking us to do. You have a reduced form of 19 over 100. Question 3. All right, another ratio problem. So here we need to find the ratio of A to B. So the quantity before the two statement will always be at the top. The quantity after the two statement will always be at the bottom. And the question says, leave this as a simplified fraction. That's what we're gonna do. And that is 7 over 19. Now B is finding the ratio of B to A. So this time our B is on top, our A is at the bottom. And again, simplified fraction. We have 19 over 7. And C, we need to find A is what percent of B. So here we take the answer from part A, and then you multiply by what? 100%. Now, why are we taking the answer from part A and not part B? So with the question, it begins with A and ends with B. Same with part A, we have A to B. So we take that value instead because they both start with A and ends with what? B. So we have 7 over 19. And then you multiply your answer by what? 100. And leave it to 1 decimal places. Which is 36.18. Now, an alternative explanation to this question. Okay, I love to teach different approaches so that students understand what is happening and can decide which method to use. Now, A is translating to what equal to. We don't know the percent. In math, if you see off means you multiply and you have your B. Now, if you divide both sides of the equation by B, you have A over B. All right, so the A over B is what we found on part A, which is 7 over 19. And then changing that to the percent gives you the percentage, which is the same as 36.8. So A is 36.8% of B. Question 4. So 4, we need to find how much each worker will be charged. So if the debt we have is 11 trillion debt, and it is going to be distributed equally among 160 million people, to find how much each worker will be charged, you have to divide the debt. So trillion, we have 12 zeros. And then million, we have 6 zeros. Put this in your calculator. This is $68,750. 68750. Question 5. Now, question 5 is a proportion question. All right, here, if 4 cookies contain 140 calories, how much will, or how many calories will be in 10 cookies? We don't know. So you keep all cookies on one side, and you keep all the calories on one side, making sure the numbers you have correspond. You need to apply product. Ten times 140 divided by 4 gives you 350 calories. So 10 cookies will have 350 calories. Question 6. 6 is a percentage problem. And using the percent proportion method, the percentage is always easier to identify. So I'll always begin with that. And then we need to figure out what is our part and what is our whole. Now, the question wants us to find the total number of employees. So our whole is unknown. We know the part, which is the number of employees that were absent. So here we don't know X, and to find that, we have to apply cross product. So 100 times 10 divided by 25 gives you the total number of employees. This is 40. Question 6. Descriptive statistics. So here we're going to look at how to find the mean, median, mode for this listed numbers. So mean is the same as the average. So we have to add up all these values and divide by how many numbers there are. So we have 34 plus 71 plus 78 plus 75 plus 54 plus 64 plus 61 plus 38 plus 72 plus 48. Divide the whole thing by how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to get the mean. So this gives a total of 595, and 595 divided by 10 gives a mean of 59.5. Now moving on to find the median. So median is the middle number, but before we find the middle number, we have to put the listed numbers in ascending order. You have to always arrange it from smallest to largest before you pick your middle number. So let's do that. The least number is 34, followed by 38. We have 48, 54, 61. Let me write it here. Well, I missed 48, 34, 38, 48, 54, 61, 64. We have 71, 72, 75, 78. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. So now that we have them in ascending order, we have to cross the highs and the lows. And the median is going to be the average of the two middle numbers. So you add the two middle numbers and divide by 2. So this is 125 divided by 2. And that is 62.5. Now, there is no mode in this data set, all right? Each data point appears the same number of times, so here there is no mode. All right, question 8. This is GPA, one application of weighted averages. And here we have a given table. So the third or the last column that we have will help us figure out the quality point. All right, because in finding GPA, you need a total quality point, and then you have to divide by the total credit hours. All right, so the first thing you have to do is to multiply each of the credit by the scale. So 3 times 2.67, 4 times 2, and 4 times 3.67. All right, so 3 times 2.67 is 8.01. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3.67 is 14.68. And then to find the GPA, you have to add up all these points. You have to add up all these values under the quality points. We have 8.01 plus 8 plus 14.68, and then divide by the total number of credit hours. So this is 3 plus 4 plus 4. This gives 2.79. It says nearest hundredth, which is the same as 2 decimal places. So you put your 279 as the GPA. All right, question 9. This is an absolute change where the new and the old value percentages. So here you don't have to convert the percentages to a decimal. You have to use it as it is. So with absolute change, which is new minus old, so we are moving from 3.2% to 4.4%. So this is our new, and this is what our old. All right, now always watch out for some of these keywords. The increase here tells you your absolute change has to be positive. So when you are getting a negative absolute change, you should know that there is something wrong with your calculation. You are missing something somewhere. So 4.4 minus 3.2 gives you 1.2 percentage point. PP is percentage point. So you just put 1.2 because they have the units already given on the problem. Now to find relative change, which is new minus old over old, and you always have to express this as a percent. So new minus old is what we already found on part A, which is 1.2. We have our old value to be 3.2, and then you change that to a percent by multiplying by 100. And we have to leave this to the nearest tenth, which is the same as one decimal place. And this is 37.5%. All right, next question. This is under linear models. So here we need to find the slope of the linear model and then interpret that slope. Now, slope is our recurring change, and here we are looking at how the tuition increases with respect to the credit hours. So the more credit hours you take, the higher your tuition. So this $411 per credit is our slope. And the $10 per semester is like a base fee, all right? So whether you take classes or not, you are paying that fee, okay, on top of that. So here the slope is 411, and you put the same thing right here, all right? Because we are interpreting that value. So the 411 here means that the tuition increases by $411 per credit. Now we need to write an equation of the model, okay, using C as a variable. Now, in writing a linear model, there are two main pieces you need. You need your slope, which is your M, which is what we found on part A. You also need your starting value of B. So writing this in the form Y equals M. Your dependent variable, your M is 411. X, which is C, and the B is what, 10. So in place of C in that equation, you're going to plug in 7. This is 2,887. All right. Next question. All right, here's another linear model equation. Here we have a graph and we have the linear model or the equation on top of the graph. And using that equation, we want to find the slope, and the coefficient of x is always what the slope. So the slope for this equation is 98.6. And this means that the entitlement spending per capita. Now, why are we selecting per capita? On the question, we say the amount the government spends per person. Per person means per capita. So when you're interpreting that, it's going to be the entitlement spending per capita in 2011 dollars is changing by the slope value. And here you have to find the label for the dependent variable, which is 2011 dollars per the label for the time, which is what, per year. Question 12. So was the growth in inflation linear or exponential? Now, if the change is a percent, all right, then you have an exponential. All right, here we are increasing at a rate of 20% per month. So this makes this an exponential model. And to be more specific, this is an exponential growth model because of the increase. So in exponential growth equation, you need to have some initial amount. You need to add the percent increase to a 1. You have to make sure to change it to a decimal. So the initial amount is the $110 food bill. The percent converted to a decimal is 0.2, and you have your time to be about 3 months. So 110 times 1.2 exponent 3. And the question wants us to round to the nearest dollar. This is $190. All right. Now for the next one, we also need to figure out whether the population growth is linear or exponential. Now, because the increase is a fixed value, this makes this growth linear. And if it is linear, we have to use the equation y equals mx plus b. Now, the y is the population. The m, which is a recurring change, is 628. The x is the time. Time is 5 years. And the starting value is the population today. So we have 628 times 5 and then plus 1600. And that is 4740. Now, compound interest. All right, we have one and only formula for compound interest, and this question was very specific as to which formula to use. So the general compound interest formula, which is on your formula sheet, which you can always refer to on the exam, you have the P given, you have the rate given, which you have to convert to a decimal. The time is also given to you, which is in years. If you are compounding annually, you are doing this once a year. So your N is 1. So to find the balance, you have 5,000 times 1 plus 0.08 divided by 1, and you have exponent 1 times root 5. And if you put this in your calculator, rounded to the nearest cent, you have 7,346.64 cents. All right. Now, next question is simple interest, right? And here we need to find the amount of money. So we are looking at the ending balance at the end of 10 years. Now, to find the ending balance, we need to find the interest and then add that interest back to the principal. So there are 2 steps involved. First, need to find the simple interest, which is P times R times T. So the P, which is the principal, is 3,200. The rate has to be converted to a decimal. So 4.4 to a decimal is 0.044. Your time is 10 years. So just this formula will give you, or just this calculation will give you the interest. And you don't stop there, or you don't put that as an answer. You have to add that back to the principal to get the amount. We have 4608. 4608. Next question. So we have an individual borrowing $75,000. So the borrowed amount here is $75,000. The annual interest rate is 4%. The number of payment per year is 12. All right, we have 12 months in a year, so the number of payment is 12. The loan term is 22 years, and the payment amount is $428. $428. Now, how many total payment does the loan require? And what is the total amount paid over the full term of the loan? So there are how many payments? So at the end of the loan term, what is the total number of payment? So 12 times 22 is the total number of payment at the end of the loan term, which is 264. And you take that 264 and then multiply by the monthly payment of 428 to get your total amount paid, which is the same as the total payback. So we have 112 992. All right. Or the total payback is also the same as if you make this payment of 428 each month for 22 years. So this 12 times 22 is what we already computed as 264. So either way. All right, the percentage paid towards the principal. So here we need to take the principal, which is the borrowed amount, divide that by a total payback or the total amount paid and express that as a percentage. So what percentage of your total payment was paid towards the principal? So 75,000 divided by your total payback and then times 100. And this is 66.4. If you leave it to the nearest tenth, 66. And here we just need to subtract the 66.4 from 100, right? The principal and the interest add up to 100%. So if you know the percentage paid towards the principal, you just need to subtract from 100 to find the percentage paid towards what interest. That's 33.6. Now the monthly payments for this question, so we use equal P and T. And we need the APR converted to a decimal, so 0.11 divided by 12. The number of payment is 12 times 4, and the borrowed amount is 10,000. You have to begin with a negative sign. So I'm going to open my Excel. All right, now for this exam, we won't have a problem that you have to use the Excel, all right? Because of the lockdown browser we're using, you won't be able to use Excel. So if there's any question like this, you'll be given the monthly payment and you'll be asked to use that to answer some question. But because this is the review, and we're assuming you have access to Excel at that point, so you should be able to use Excel to answer this question. But on the exam, you won't have a problem like this where you have to use Word Excel. So we have 258.46 if you put that into Excel. And the total payback, so if you make this payment of 258.46 each month for 4 years, at the end of the 4 years, how much are you paying back? Which is 12,406.08. And the percentage paid towards the principal of the total amount paid, what percentage is paid towards the principal? So you take the borrowed amount, which is the principal, divide that by your total payback, and then express that as a percent. And leaving that to the nearest tenth, this is 80.6. And since we know one, we can find the other one by subtracting from 100. So the percentage paid towards the interest, we subtract 80.6 from 100. This is 19.4. All right, question 18. So retirement question. So Here we have a maximum amount the company is willing to contribute up to. All right, so we need to figure out that max before we even start solving the problem. Now here we have 7% of your salary. So if you take 7% of $85,000, you have 59.50, and then you take half of that. For every 50 cents, for every dollar you contribute, the company is matching with 50 cents. So if you take half of this amount, it gives you the amount the company will contribute on your behalf at the end of the year. And since we have monthly payments, we divide this amount by 12. So the maximum amount the company is willing to contribute per month is this. So that's the max. They cannot go beyond that, right? So that is what you always have to begin with. If there is that threshold, or if there is that maximum amount the company is going to contribute up to. Now, coming back to the question, if you contribute for $400 every month to your 401k, the company is going to contribute 50% of that. And 50% of $400, all right? 50 cents for every dollar is the same as 50% of whatever you contribute. So this is $200. And since $200 is less than the max, they are going to give you all the money that month. Now, if you take 50% of, for B, if you take 50% of $820, this is 425. Now, because 425 is greater than the maximum amount the company is going to contribute up to, they are only going to contribute the max, which is the 247.92. So even though half of 820 gives you 425, they are not going to give you all the money because they have the maximum amount they are willing to contribute up to. All right. They are not going to give all their money away. They have to set that threshold just to be on the safer side. All right, now the maximum amount of money the company will contribute to your 401k each year. So each year is going to be 2975. So that is what we found. You take 7% of 85,000, that gives you 59.50. And if they are matching 50 cents for every dollar, that is 2,975. This value right here. And so 7% of 85,000. And we did the at 5,950, and half of that is 2,975. And this is the maximum amount the company will contribute each year. Question 19. Suppose you deposited $50 per month into a savings plan. So your personal contribution is 50 times 12 times 6, which is 3,600. And then you have the FV value to be 19,800. That's your balance. Now to find the interest, it is the FV minus your contribution. So you have 19,800 minus 3,600. which is 16,200. So let's pick the correct answer choice. So that's B. So it was 16,200. You calculate the amount deposited over 6 years and then subtract it from the balance. All right, measurements and conversions. We have 30 pounds, which we have to convert to kilograms. So using the factor label method, I have to begin with the 30 pounds, express that as a fraction over 1. And then since I have pounds here, I should have pounds at the bottom part of my next fraction. So going to use this conversion factor. My 1 pound stays at the bottom and my 0.4536 kilograms stays at the top. So 30 times 0.4536 and rounded to 2 decimal places is 13.61. All right, next question is 21.3 liters to gallons. So another measurement conversions. So starting with my given measurement, which is 21.3 liters, using the factor label method, I'm going to express that as a fraction over 1. And you go to your formula sheet and you find the relationship or the conversion factor that will help you convert from liters to gallons. So on the formula sheet, you have 1 gallon is equal to 3.7854 liters. So you put your 3.7854 liters at the bottom and you put your 1 gallon at the top. Liters cancel out. Divide 21.3 by 3.7854. This is so to 1 decimal place, 5.6. All right, dosage calculation. So here we have the weight of the patient of the child to be 74.8 pounds. Express that as a fraction over 1, and then using this conversion factor, you have your 2.2 pounds at the bottom and you have your 1 kg at the top. So 74.8 divided by 2.2 is 34 kilograms. And then you take that answer and multiply by the dosage rate to get the B part. So 34 kg times 1.3 milligram per kg. We have 34 times 1.3. That is 44.2. And then for ml, you take the answer from part B. So you take your milligram and then apply the concentration of the drug. So 44.2 milligrams. And you have to flip that rate with your 2 ml on top and your 130 mg at the bottom. So this is 44.2 times 2 divided by 130. And that is 0.68. Question 23. This is probability of rolling a 4. So rolling a 4 is just 1 out of 12. All right, we only have one possibility. Probability of rolling a 4 is just one time out of the 12 total possible outcomes. All right, now here we have a normal distribution. All right, so first we need to find the approximate percentile for one region, or for one city with a life expectancy of what, 74.87. So to find a percentile, we need to first find the z-score. So you convert 74.87 to a z-score. All right, so use the z-score formula, which is on your formula sheet. X minus the mean divided by standard deviation. Your X is the data value you are converting to a z-score. And this is 0.53. Now you go to your formula sheet, right? You will notice that with the 0.53 that I have, with the values that I have on this question, there is no 0.53 and that is z-score. So with a question like this, you need to find the z-score value in the table that is closest to your calculated z-score and use its corresponding probability. So the value that is closest to that is 0.55. Right, so 0.55 has a probability of 0.7088, which is 70.88, and to the nearest percentile, you have what? 78th percentile. All right, so if you have 0.53, you go to your z-score chart, you find the z-score value on the table that is closest to your calculated z-score. So z-score 0.55 is closest to that 0.53, and then the probability for 0.55 is 0.7088, which is 78th percentile. Now, for B, I'm going to use the empirical rule. And why am I using that? I'm using that because I know that on the question, 84.14 is exactly 2 deviations above the mean. So 86.14 falls exactly on the deviation. So I can easily use the empirical rule to answer this question. So I'm going to draw my bell-shaped curve with my mean at the center, which is 70.76. 1 deviation above the mean. You keep adding the deviation every step along the way. So 70.76 plus 7.79 gives you 78.45. 2 deviations above the mean, you add 7.69 to 78.45, which is 86.14. And 3 deviations, I'm going to add 7.69 to 86.14, which is 93.83. And on the left side, I'm going to subtract the deviations every step along the way. So I have 63.07. 2 deviations below the mean, I'll subtract 7.69 from 63.07, giving me 55.38. And 3 deviations below the mean, I'm going to subtract 7.69 from 55.38, giving me 47.69. So I then go to my formula sheet and indicate the percentages in each of the chunk. Right. 34, 34, 13.5, 2.35, 0.15, 13.5, 2.35.15. All right, so I have all that I need to be able to answer this question. So the question says find the probability greater than 86.14. So this is 86.14. I'm looking at all the percentages above that. So 2.35 plus 0.15, which is 2.5%. And approximately 99% of cities in the region have a life expectancy between two values. So 99.7%, approximately 99.7% of the data values are within 3 deviations. So here is my 3 deviation below, and here is my 3 deviations above. So I'm looking at 47.69 and 93.83, which is B. Question 25. Right, so on this problem, we are given the percentile, and we can use the percentile to find the z-score. All right, we have the mean, we have the deviation, and we can find x. We don't know x. All right, this question wants us to find x. So 90th percentile, you go to your z-score chart, and the approximate 90th percentile is 0.9032, and that has a corresponding z-score of 1.3. Okay, 90th percentile has a z-score of 1.3. So using the z-score formula, we can find the x. So we have 1.3 equals x minus 0.105 divided by 13. So to get rid of the fraction, you have to multiply both sides of the equation by 13. So 13 times 1.3 gave 16.9, and then equal that to x minus 105. You add 105 on both sides, which is 121.9. And round to the nearest whole number, we have 122. So the 90th percentile is 122. All right, now here's a table. So this is a probability table. All right, this is under false positive, false negative test as one of the applications of probabilities. We can use this table to answer the probability questions we have. Now, if you see keywords like suppose, if, or given, that tells you there is what a condition. So your condition always stays at the bottom of the fraction. So we are looking at the total positive mammogram as the condition. And then within the condition, you want to pick your portion of interest. So if your tumor is malignant, that means you have cancer. So 90. All right. So the bottom part, you have positive mammogram as your condition, and you are looking at cancer and positive mammogram. And since we have the percentage symbol, we have to express the final result as a percentage by multiplying by 100%. And leave it to the nearest tenth, which is 6.5. All right, Now, the next one is also a conditional probability. We have the given statement. So given is the condition. So we are looking at the total cancer and the total tumor that is cancerous as the condition. So that stays at the bottom part of your fraction. And within that, you want to select your positive mammogram, which is 90. And expressing that as a percentage, you have to multiply by 100. So this is 90%. And another conditional probability, suppose we are looking at the total negative mammogram as the condition. So we're going to go around that total negative mammogram. We have A608 at the bottom, and within that, you want to select those that have cancer, which is 10. And then express that as a percentage by multiplying by 100. Which is 0.12%. If you leave it to the nearest hundredth, which is the same as 2 decimal place. Right. Another probability question. Find the probability of surviving a car accident given. So the given here tells us we have a condition. So we are looking at the total drivers that did not wear a seatbelt. Our condition. So we have 168,258 at the bottom part of our fraction, and within that we want to select those that survived. So 166683 into 3 decimal places. Is 0.991. The reduced fraction simplified form. Okay, and we divide this 3. Okay. Now let's divide both the top part and the bottom part by 3 and see. 166. 3 half 5, 5. Divide the top part and the bottom part by 3. All right, let's see if we can reduce this further. Right, we can divide it anymore. So I think this should be the reduced form then. We have 55561 divided by 56086. Okay, perfect. All right, 28. All right, find the probability that a randomly selected person age 25 or over has completed 4 years of high school only, or some college but less than 4 years. So this is an all probability. We have to use the addition rule. Or less than 4 years. Okay, so I'm going to use A and B as my event, okay, so that I'm not writing a whole long sentence. Okay, you need to find probability of being 4 years of high school only. And you need to also find probability that the student is, or the person selected at random is, or has some college, but less than 4 years. And if there is an overlapping piece, you have to subtract that. And this is a mutually exclusive event. Okay, both events cannot occur at the same time. So this part will definitely be 0. The overlapping piece will be 0. Right, they are independent events. So probability of 4 years of high school only, I'm looking at 57 over 165, and then plus some college but less than 4 years. We're looking at 40 over 165, and there is no overlapping piece, so that part goes to 0. So 57 plus 40 divided by 165, a simplified fraction. 97 over 165. And our very last question has to do with margin of error and confidence interval. So given a sample size to find the margin of error, this is plus or minus square root of, plus or minus 1 over square root of n. So we have plus or minus 1 over square root of sample size is 1,000. And since we have a percentage, meaning we have to convert this decimal to a percent by multiplying by 100. So you type 1 divided by square root of 1,000 and then times that by 100, and leaving that to one decimal place is 3.2%. 3.2. And for the confidence interval, you add and subtract the sample percentage to the margin of error. You're going to subtract to get the lower end, and you're going to add to get the higher end. Well, 55 minus 3.2 is 51.8%. And then 55 plus 3.2 is 58.2%. So you begin with the lower end, and then to the higher end. So the confidence interval is from 51.8 to 58.2. All right, so that is all that we have for the review. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye.